Hey, 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 ladies. Well, let's try this again. Tonight's talk is all about sleeplessness. And with 6 planets in retrograde and the second full moon of this month, I can definitely tell you that things have been a little crazy around here. No Wi-Fi this morning, no cell phone service, and then everything comes back on and then it's off and then it's pouring rain. We've got thunder and lightning, that sort of thing. So yeah, we've got a hurricane on the East Coast. And yeah, it's kind of nice. Portland, Oregon, it's raining again. It's kind of nice today. So yeah, just a reminder that true love does begin with you. It begins with loving yourself, with self-love, with learning new life skills, and also with learning new life skill or with learning new self-care, like how to take care of yourself. And it all begins with loving yourself. And again, just a reminder that watch all the way through the end. And I do give you a question at the end to ponder your own situation. So thanks for joining me live tonight. And again, today's talk is all about sleeplessness. And you know, one of the things after divorce, after separation, after healing from narcissistic abuse, there just is this like sleeplessness that happens, you know, this insomnia. And if that's you, you know, you're not alone. There's between 50 and 70 million Americans who suffer from sleepless nights. And, you know, that can lead into like chronic sleeplessness where that's something that's ongoing for 2 or more nights per week. And it really does impact our daily life. It impacts our health. It impacts how long we're going to live on this earth. Because if we are in a sustained chronic sleepless state, then we're going to live less in our life because of all of the health challenges that just sleep, with us not sleeping, what that brings. And it can really impact overall health too, with other diseases like heart disease, obesity, diabetes, stroke, even the increased impact of stroke on your health. And you know, what's really curious is that there are over 90 sleep disorders. And it's really amazing that there's all different types. It's not just insomnia. It's just not hard to get to sleep or sleep apnea or whatever. There are 90 sleep disorders. And, you know, they can range from anything where it's excessive daytime tiredness, where, you know, you're just lethargic going through the day because you haven't slept the night before, or you're having difficulty going to sleep every single night. Like you just like lay in bed and you're on your like 10th version of counting 100 sheep. Or you may be one of those people that has difficulty maintaining sleep throughout the night. So maybe, you know, 2 o'clock, 2 a.m. is your witching hour. And so, you know, there's the sustained sleepers, your inability to sustain sleep throughout the whole night. You have a hard time going to sleep, and then you can't maintain sleep. So those are kind of the 3 different types of sleep disorders. And, you know, if you don't sleep throughout the night, it really puts you at great risk for heart disease, for increased sugar, you know, being able to maintain your glucose levels. So you have an increased risk of contracting diabetes. There's also a lot of studies around weight gain with sleeplessness, and also like a higher incidence rate of obesity. You know, if you go through many sleepless nights, that'll impact your weight, as well as long-term, your BMI, your basal metabolic rate. There's also increased anxiety and depression because you're not having that restful sleep overnight. And really, sleep is a way for our body to restore itself. It's a way for our brain to rest, to get into REM sleep, to get into different types of brain waves like alpha, theta, and delta. You know, when you're dreaming and you're in those different states, your brain has different brain waves. And you really want to ultimately be in theta, which is mostly attributed to meditation. And so getting a good night's sleep with being able to get into REM sleep also helps your brain to rest while you're there. And also during the night, we also have our DNA is repaired. Like our cells go into this rejuvenative cycle of repair when we're sleeping, as does our digestive system. You know, if we go to bed at 9 o'clock at night and we sleep through till the next morning and we have breakfast, we basically have 8 to 10 to 11 hours of intermittent fasting where our whole digestive tract really clears out and gets back to a baseline normal. So, you know, if we're not sleeping through the night, we're going to have those many systems that are impacted. So there's increased anxiety, increased depression, and also increased risk of stroke. I've also seen that a lot of people, that they have reliance to alcohol, that in order to get to sleep, that sometimes they drink alcohol to be able to soothe and go to sleep. Or there's also a reliance on sleep aids, and that can be from over the counter with like Tylenol PM or NyQuil or any of those Benadryl. You can get prescription Benadryl or even Ambien or any of those other type of sleep aids. So there's a reliance, you know, to get to sleep on other aids. And, you know, there are other impacts as well. Not only do we have heart disease and diabetes and stroke and coping mechanisms that are impacted, but the other thing is that our cognitions, when we don't have enough sleep, our cognitions are actually impaired as well. So we don't think as clearly, we don't have good memory, we have poor concentration, and we also have really lackluster focusing ability on whatever task that we have, whether that's with our family or at work or, you know. And the other thing is that sleeplessness, there are a lot of instances that people fall asleep at the wheel. I mean, you guys have read about it in the newspaper, but there's a lot of auto crashes that are attributed to sleeplessness and not getting enough sleep, where just people fall asleep at the wheel. And also there's a reduced reaction time, you know, as well, is that when you don't have enough sleep and you need to be doing a manual task or a computer task or whatever, there's more delays in what's going on in your brain. And so you're not really thinking clearly. And if we think about that, we're not really acting very clearly if we are in a sleepless state. And one of the things that's really interesting, that you really have to dig into some of the dynamics around sleeplessness. And for me, as a nutritional therapist and a personal trainer and also a life coach, I'm always reading up on different sleep studies and sleep hygiene and other things to help my clients be better about getting to sleep. And one of the things that you don't really hear too much about is how much sleeplessness has impacted like different main tragedies that have happened in the US. And one of them, for example, is the Space Shuttle Challenger. When it crashed, they did a whole study on all of the contributing factors that happened behind the Space Shuttle Challenger blowing up on launch. And one of the things that they figured out is that a lot of the senior managers who were at the control panels, that they'd only had 2 hours of sleep before their shift when that all occurred. And they had all been up for like shifts on end. So they had been up for 16 hours, only sleeping for 2 to go back for the launch. And the other thing is that there's been 2 nuclear disasters. They're Chernobyl and also 3 Mile Island. Those nuclear plants had major core functioning, mechanical functions, but they were at the helm of people who were sleep deprived. And so that was a contributing factor of human error, where people didn't act in the right way in a specified time to be able to get to make sure that tragedy didn't happen. And the other thing is, if you remember way back when, the Exxon Valdez oil spill that was up in Alaska, again, that was another whole sleepless contributing factor. The whole crew had been up loading all of the oil onto that super tanker. And there was one person who was at the helm when that crashed, and he had only had a cat nap before he was at the helm of this super tanker carrying all that oil when it crashed. And so you don't really hear about, all of these different major incidents, commercial tragedies that have happened in the US, but a contributing factor was definitely sleeplessness. And so if that can happen, in that way, professionally, in mechanical ways, which are critical to US, then it can happen to us as well. And it really, we can, when we are having sleepless nights, not only does it impact us, how we function on a day-to-day basis, but it also impacts our quality of life. Like for those people that work on graveyard and they don't get enough sleep, or even if you miss a few hours of sleep, like your quality of life just goes down. And there's more mood disorders because you might be more angry, or you haven't had sleep, so you're more irritable. You may have reduced motivation. Like if you don't have enough sleep, you are lethargic the next day. And then you can't even move through your day in the way if you had 8 hours of sleep. So you have low motivation, and then that translates to not being able to spend time with the kids or the family or do things for yourself. And then you also have the inability to multitask. You're so focused on concentrating to do your task when you're sleep deprived that you actually can't do much multitasking. Like driving and talking on a phone. I don't know who does that, but when I'm driving, I don't talk to anybody. I need all my eyes and I need all my faculties when I'm driving. So I can't even imagine what that would look like being sleepless, having a sleepless night and a few hours of sleep, and then having to drive and multitasking because you're having to look for other drivers, you're having to look for your road, where you're going, and everything else. And then that also impedes your situational awareness. So, when we have this, hey, what's going on around me? What are other people doing? And how do I need to keep me safe? Or how do I need to keep me navigating? We don't have the ability to widen our sphere of influence. So we don't have that situational awareness. Typically when we sleep 8 hours a night, we have that ability to be like, oh, if I do this, then I need to do this, this, and this. Or if somebody does this, then I can do this, and just kind of rotate around that. But if we're sleepless, we have less situational awareness, and that can really put us in dangerous situations. Like I said before, just like those tragedies with the Exxon Valdez and also the nuclear and also the shuttle Challenger, there's low reaction times. Excuse me, lower reaction times, so we can't get to do things in a quick way. Like that could be we're driving the car and we don't have the ability to react quickly on the brake, so we get into an accident. So there's lower reaction times. And again, our thought processes are just all squirreled up because we didn't have our restful night of sleep. And with all of that, it impacts us and it impacts others. But then also, if you have a sleepless night, then you're not taking good self-care of yourself. You just want to get home and take a nap or take it easy or watch TV. You have lower chance of taking care of yourself with medical appointments because you're trying to catch up on sleep. You also have poor memory and poor concentration with sleepless nights. And it not only impacts you, but it also impacts your family life. And it also can impact work, like not getting your assignment done, or as I've talked about with these other commercial entities, that there could be accidents and injuries that occur at work because we're not maintaining the recommended 8 hours of sleep. And as we get older, the 40 plus woman, and, I've talked to my mom and dad. My dad just turned 80 and my mom's 77. And like all of the people in the gym, they all have sleepless nights, there's just, as you age, you just have more sleepless nights and you're taking more melatonin to get to sleep and maybe more sleep aids. And, the biggest thing is that 18% of all adults report actually receiving sufficient sleep. So that means that there's almost 72% of us that are reporting that we're not getting enough sleep. And I can say I'm a really good sleeper, and I am really impacted when I don't get 8 hours of sleep. And I also can say that that's part of my beauty regime, is that I ensure I get my 8 hours of sleep. And I was really distracted during my divorce. Like, there just was that 2 o'clock waking hour that would happen for like almost 2 years, and I couldn't get back to sleep at 4. And I was just really struggling like with my memory and focusing and concentration. So yeah, it's a thing. Also, the CDC says that 25% or more get only 6 hours of sleep at night. So that means that 75% of us are getting less than 6 hours of sleep at night. And they do say the recommended sleep is between 6 and 8 hours. And I would have to say it's probably more of 7 to 8 hours per night of sleep. And there are some other contributing factors that go on with sleeplessness. There's a higher chance of obesity. So that means the shorter that we sleep, the greater our obesity levels. And that also means that we have more basal metabolic, our BMI, our basal metabolic rate. Like, we have more of our body mass index. Sorry, getting my two words mixed up. But the BMI, our body mass index, anything over 30 puts us in the obese category. And if we're not sleeping enough, then there also is this whole component where the hormone that is responsible for appetite control actually goes out the roof. So you have more appetite if you're not sleeping well, which actually goes along with the weight gain that's in there. And again, if you gain weight, that there is a likelihood of sleep apnea, so having breathing problems as well. So this thing like snowballs, not having a regular night's sleep, and then you have more sleepless nights where that becomes a chronic thing, then it turns into medical health issues, and then there's long-term impacts to your health. And, that first one is obesity. And the second one is diabetes is another factor in that. Again, if you're not getting sleep in the middle of the night, what's happening is your glucose, your whole sugar, your glucose monitoring goes back and resets to normal. And if you don't have that, then everything's just running like it normally does during the day. And again, that there is a 2.5 times more likely chance of you to have diabetes if you're getting 5 hours of sleep or less per night. So there's not only obesity, there's diabetes that you're at risk of contracting. There's also heart attack. There was a study that was done by the Nurses Health Study in 2003, and they found that you had a 45% increased chance of a heart attack with less than 5 hours of sleep. So again, it impacts obesity, diabetes, your risk of heart attack, and having cardiovascular outcomes. There's also mood and anxiety, where you have excessive mental distress, and that could present in a way of depression or anxiety. It also can present as attempted suicide. And that also impacts young adults as well. They really need between 7 to 9 hours of sleep when they're a teenager. And oftentimes, if they're not able to get to sleep because they're looking at their devices all the time, then they're not getting enough sleep. And I think that that's a contributing factor also for the increased number of teen suicides, is they're just not getting their sleep. And that would be really interesting. This study was a lot of these studies were back in the 2000s, 2005, 2010 timeframe. And it would be curious if those were updated for today for how much people spend time on their screen. And again, there's behavioral problems, probably a lot of anger management and low self-esteem, low confidence, because you're just tired. You're not able to do all that. And again, there isn't longevity with your life. You actually, there's a 15% decreased chance of premature death if you have 5 hours or less of sleep per night, and if you do that on a chronic, repetitive basis. And, I just wanted to share that I started working part-time probably about 5 months ago, and the only shift that was available was graveyard. And I've never worked a graveyard, and I said, okay, well, I'll try it. So I started working graveyard shift. I started working like 1:30 to 9:30 in the morning. And, the first couple weeks, it was kind of, unique, and I went in and did it. But I really found after 8 weeks of doing that, I found that I was hungry all the time. Like I just was eating. And then I was tired. Like I would try to go to sleep around 6 o'clock at night, but it was fitful sleep and not really good REM sleep. And so I would sleep from 6 until like 12:45. And then I would do my shift, and then I would come home and take a nap, but my nap would be like 5 hours. So I'm actually like sleeping double of what I normally would at night. And then I just started to get really depressed. Like it was just like, I got to get home. I got to get home to get to sleep. And then I got to eat. And then it just was all I was chasing was sleep. And after the 8 weeks, another 4 more weeks went on, and I actually went to the emergency room for heart attack symptoms. And, I had an EKG, and then I ended up having an echocardiogram. And, what I want to share is that I had a whole little experiment that happened around sleeplessness for me on being on graveyard shift. So there was the change in appetite control. There was change in how my heart rhythms happened. I was sleeping a lot more. I got more moody. I was a little bit more bluesy and more depressed, and I became more agitated, and I really didn't want to do anything in life. And it took forever for me to get off on day shift, but I'm on day shift now, and that feels wonderful. But that was like a whole little experiment for me to live like all of these different contributing health factors that can happen if you're in an environment for sleeplessness. So I just couldn't really understand the heart rhythms and everything else. And after I started doing some research, it's pretty amazing that your heart would be impacted with the lack of sleep. But I lived it, and it was pretty scary during that time. But the thing that's most interesting about sleeplessness that a lot of people don't know is that, think about it. When you go to the doctor, does your doctor ever say, hey, how many hours of sleep do you get, Denise? Or, tell me about your sleep habits. Like, no doctor asks that. And it's the most overlooked health problem that we have. And it's the easiest thing to fix. It's the most treatable thing. Sleeplessness is the most treatable condition that we can do that can be changed with how we navigate life, like how we look at stress, how do we take care of ourselves. And so even though we may have some sleepless nights, but there's some actions that we can take on our own that makes that easily treatable and not needing a doctor. Or, sometimes there are reasons when we need to go see the doctor for sleeplessness, and I do support that. But there are a lot of lifestyle changes. There are a lot of limits that you need to have with yourself around sleep. And all of that is just very important for, and Janie, isn't that like, it's hard when you're not sleeping, it just like permeates everything that you do. And it's, and even like aging, like how our collagen, how, us ladies over 40, How much water are we drinking and how much sleep, and how is that impacting our complexion and the number of wrinkles? And, what if you eat pizza, like you get, I don't like to eat pizza all that much, but, you have raccoon eyes. And it's kind of like the same thing with sleeplessness. It's easily treatable if you understand all of the little dynamics that go into that. How to quiet your mind, how to get into a sleep routine, how to understand your habits. And that does take commitment and loving yourself to be able to take those different steps to make sure that you get sleep. And all I want to say is that going through divorce and separation and healing from narcissistic abuse, those are incredibly stressful times. And those are times where you're thinking about, how is the house payment going to get paid? Or how is this all going to be divided? Or all of the legal challenges? Or do I need to have a forensic accountant look at all the finances? And how is this going to work out? And this isn't anything that I planned for. And all of the brain is just going 100 miles a minute, and you know that you need to go to sleep. And it's just a very difficult time after divorce and separation when things just aren't really solid in your life. And I just want to say that I understand that. And it's so important to understand not only the short-term impacts of having sleep and what sleeplessness does to us in the short term, having us weight gain, diabetes, heart attack, our thoughts, concentration, multitasking, our mood, anxiety, depression, all of that. But also for the long term, like if that goes on for a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, it all compounds. That you're not just talking like one system. You could have cardiovascular outcomes and have diabetes, or also, have markers for having a stroke, or, having a mood disorder. So the longer that you are in a sleepless state, the longer that you're going to have and the greater chance of having more health outcomes. And so my question today for you is, how is the quality of sleep? And, if you do have any sleep issues, drop those in the comments. I'd love to hear, where you ladies are struggling. And yeah, of course, having a gallon of water and then being up at night to go to the bathroom. I totally get that now. And yeah, being narcissistic free. Yep, happier now. And you're in the healing phase. So congratulations on that. So yeah, how is the quality of your sleep? And what type of sleep issues are you having in this stage in your healing after divorce, after separation, after in singledom, or after narcissistic abuse and healing and all of that? So drop those in the comments. And again, I've enjoyed our conversation tonight, and I hope you have a good night's sleep. And if you have any techniques for how you do get to sleep, please share those in the comments too. Everybody has different techniques. And, one of them, I'm very music oriented. And I just have fallen into this couple of meditation states that have theta brainwaves, and they're a little weird. Some of them can amp you up, but some of them just totally chill you out. So, having different types of meditation with different types of music can be very helpful. And yeah, so we talked about sleeplessness and some of the health impacts. And I just wanted to close this talk and just say that, be your own true love by loving yourself happily ever after. And, the whole trick is loving ourselves, like making ourselves a priority and loving ourselves whole and making sure that we're taken care of. Just like the flight attendant says on all of the flights, like if the oxygen mask comes down, put that on yourself first and then tend to other people. And I know that's so hard for us women and us ladies. We are caretakers. but we need to love ourselves first, and then we can live happily ever after. And, again, if we're loving ourselves, we vibe different. And when we're taking care of ourselves, and when we're setting boundaries, and when we're communicating our worth, and we know that we are enough, we have different vibes, and we attract a different tribe. And when we attract a different tribe, we attract different partners and different people who will take us to the next level. So I just wanted to remind you that, be your own true love and really focus on you. And yeah, I look forward to carrying on the conversation. Later in the week, we're going to talk about insomnia, which is a little bit different than sleeplessness. And we'll drill down on that, and we'll kind of unpack more stuff about sleeplessness and the impacts of long-term health on that. So thank you for joining me tonight. I look forward to talking with you again, and I hope you have a good night. Take care. Bye-bye.